Okay, so we have been talking about plot, and I wanted to dig deeper with plot with y'all because I noticed that as we studied plot and on your quizzes last week, that some of you had a difficult time, and that's fine because I'm not sitting right there with you. So, with that being said, we're going to spend another week or so on plot and the plot elements, okay? So, you need to understand that this right here is our mini lesson for the day. And I want you to get out a sheet of notebook paper and you're going to pretend that I'm sitting right there in front of you. And I want you to listen and pause and do whatever you need to get this down because this is really important information for you to understand fiction plot diagrams. So, the first thing I need you to do, and you don't have to make it colorful, I just did because it helps me, is I want you to go ahead and draw this diagram. Now, you will notice that the left diagonal line is longer than the right diagonal line, and there's a purpose for that. So I need you to go ahead and draw those diagonal lines just like I have drawn them. And I want you to, at the top, write plot diagram. Okay, we know that a diagram is a text feature, and a text feature is anything that helps us better understand what we're reading, whether it's words or images, charts, graphs, whatever. I want you to write down that this is for fiction. So this goes for all fiction genres, whether it's realistic fiction, science fiction, historical fiction, fantasy, fairy tales. All of those subgenres will follow this diagram, this type of map, for you to understand how the story works together, okay? I will be writing down all the different parts of our plot diagram, and I want you to make those notes as well. So we're going to start on the left-hand side of our diagram. And the way this will go is it will, no, I don't want you to do this, but I just want you to watch. This is how our story flows, okay? This is the start. It's like a race or a map. And this is the finish, okay? So I want you to know that this is the flow of a plot diagram, okay? And all of the things that happen along the way will fall along this particular plot, all right? So I don't want you to get all like stressed out to just say, well, where in the world do I start? Okay. It starts on the left and goes to the right, just like when we're reading. All right. On the left-hand side, under that first long line, we're going to write this word, exposition. Exposition. Okay. Exposition. This is when we actually ex is a prefix which means out of, okay? So out of all of the different parts of the story at the very beginning, it's really critical that we find out the main setting or one of the main settings as well as the main characters. Don't just write characters. I want you to write main characters because you might meet lots of different characters as we go along this journey through the story and the plot line. But at the very beginning, we at least meet one or two main characters, okay? Now, after the exposition, the setting may change periodically, but you will at least have a good understanding of where this story is taking place for the main character, okay? Whether it be a city, like a broad type setting, or a very specific narrow setting like a school building or a park bench, that type of thing. All right, y'all, this next part of our story happens right after we meet the main characters. It is not too far after you meet the main characters in the setting that we come upon the conflict. Okay, go ahead and write out conflict. All right, this is the problem that the main character faces or characters face. Okay, write that down, pause it, whatever you need to do. Okay, I'm going to put I'm like going to bubble this in yellow. If you want to highlight it, whatever you can. Without the conflict, you have no story. Okay, here's a side note, and I want you to write these synonyms off to the side. Okay, a synonym is a word that means the same or nearly the same as another word. So you might hear a synonym for the word conflict such as problem or incited, incident. An incident, if you have an incident, it's like an accident, a problem, a conflict. Okay, so if you ever hear a teacher, or maybe this week as we're studying, we might hear these different synonyms, you know that it's talking about the conflict. All right, I want you to think about your own life. In your own life, there is never a solution unless there is a problem. So there's no point in finding the answer if there is no problem, right? If for girls, we like a little bit of drama and a little bit of conflict because it makes life interesting. We feel like we know something. Boys, I'm not so sure about. Maybe your conflict is video games or something like that. But you want a little bit of conflict to make it interesting. That's why we're hooked into a book so easily, because the conflict is just so juicy. And that is what the main character faces. Okay, so you need to understand that without a conflict, you have no story. All right, next part. I use orange. All right, now we have what's called the rising action. Okay. Now, there is no correct number of events that occur, but usually there are 1, 2, maybe 3 main events. I'm going to write it above here because I'm running out of room. Events that lead to the climax. All right, and you're like, well, what the heck is a climax? Well, I'm going to get there. Okay, so the rising action are 3 or 4 events that the main character and its friends or people that it meets along the way go on as they are trying to come to a moment in their life in this story that really changes for them, okay? And when that moment happens, when the main character is just like, oh my word, it finally is all making sense. I totally get it. I cannot believe I didn't see it. The climax, and I've always called this the game changing moment, okay? This is critical, okay? I want you to draw an arrow. Again, if you need to pause this, please do. The climax is when the main character or characters has a shift in emotions or lifestyle. And what I mean by that is, if you go all the way back to the beginning, maybe we met this character and they were a big grump butt. Okay, they just were always grumpy, making everybody else, whatever, miserable. And then they face a problem and they're like, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to get out of this problem? I'm always a grump butt, blah, blah, blah. And they go through this, 1 to 3 different things along the way. And then, like, boom shakalaka, they fall upon this moment where their heart changes. They have a heart change, or their life totally changes, okay? This is the moment, and a lot of times kids and even adults have a problem with identifying what the game-changing moment may be. Now, go back to the rising action. This is an important event, this is an important event, and this is an important event. But the climax, y'all, that is the moment where our main character shifts in one direction, either from good to bad or bad to good. Okay, so it is game changing for their heart, for their life, whatever. Okay, after that, now notice how the left side is shorter than the right side. That's because our falling action, it doesn't take a bazillion million activities or events, usually only 1 to 2 main events. main events that lead to our final, and I know that I keep clicking on the screen and you probably cannot see what I've written, but you can in a minute. Pause it. When we finally get to the resolution, okay? Resolution. That's an N at the very end. Ooh, that is so terrible handwriting. I-O-N. All right, here's some synonyms. Okay, sometimes you might hear conclusion. I don't really like the word conclusion. That's kind of like a finality, like there's an answer. If you read a book, there's not always an answer, like cancer is not always solved or healed. The thing is not always fixed. It's the thing that's broken is not always fixed. So, but a lot of times people do call it a conclusion or the end. Those are some synonyms that you might hear. Now, this is just kind of like a moment of, phew, I can breathe, okay, for the main character, all right, or characters. This is when the main character, after the main character has gone through the climax, they've changed their heart, their lifestyle. They're coming back down. Maybe they are just like chilling out in life after the climax. A couple of things happen, and then the end of the story comes, right? And everybody lives happily ever after, or at least the main character does, all right? So this is the plot diagram that I want you to be familiar with. You have to understand these different parts of our plot diagram in order to understand the parts of a story. Every story is going to follow this storyline if it is a fictional story. If it falls into the category of fiction, like I said, fairy tale, fantasy, science fiction, realistic fiction, just fiction. I mean, it's historical fiction. It's going to follow this plot line, or else you don't have a real story. If you watch a cartoon, you can kind of follow in that 26 minutes of the cartoon or however long it is, or even a movie. If you're watching a movie, if you were to follow the plot diagram for Finding Nemo, you would follow this exactly and you would see what's going on. So let's talk about Finding Nemo really fast, okay? So if we were to, hold on, let me go out of this. If we were to talk about Finding Nemo, now you do not have to draw this, but I have my plot diagram right here. Okay. Now, here at the very bottom, we have our exposition. That is our setting and our characters. We have our conflict, which comes soon after. This is the problem, the incited incident that our main character faces. This is the rising action, the events that lead to the climax, the game-changing moments for the main character or characters. This is the falling action. And then we have our resolution, the end, okay? Let's see if I can go through Finding Nemo with y'all. Again, you don't have to write this down. At the very beginning, we meet Marlin, the dad, and Nemo, the son, and we know that they live in the sea. Very easy, okay? The conflict is what? What is the main conflict that our main character Nemo faces? Nemo faces that his dad doesn't trust him. Nemo's dad doesn't trust him and is very protective. And there's a good reason for that, because remember, at the very beginning, Marlin's wife was eaten by and all the other little fish eggs were eaten by that piranha thing. So he has a very good reason for being very protective. But for Nemo, that's the conflict, right? All right, so this is the problem that Nemo is facing. Now, rising actions come when Nemo, these are events that lead to the game-changing moment. Sometimes it's easier to identify the climax when the main characters have a heart change and they're able to figure out what they need to do, okay? So, Nemo goes to the drop-off. okay? The diver catches Nemo. Marlin searches for Nemo with Dory. Okay, so my map is very short. We could add maybe a few more rising actions. But y'all, the game-changing moment for both Marlin and Nemo is Marlin realizes he never trusted Nemo. So go back to the conflict. Here's the conflict, right? This directly relates to how Nemo felt, right? And then Nemo realizes, oh my gosh, I'm trapped in this tank. I need my dad. Nemo realizes he needs his dad, right? And so for the first time, it's like a heart change for both of them, which goes all the way back to the conflict that Nemo faced, okay? And we could have also put in there a conflict for Marlin would have been for both main characters, and Marlin particularly, that he didn't trust the open sea for Nemo and that he was always scared something would happen. All right, so here we are. They have a game-changing moment. All right, now we're going to go back to our falling action. Well, let's do a different color. I don't know why I haven't done different colors all along the way. All right, let's do our falling action, which is, let's see what happens in the movie. Okay, so Marlin finds where Nemo is, which is where? At the dentist's office. And then the bird, I don't remember what the bird's name is. Goodness. The bird, oh, wait, that's how he finds it. The bird gets info to Marlin. I guess that could have gone in number 1. And then we have our resolution, which is the answer to our problem. And that is Nemo flushes himself, which sounds so disgusting. I'm running out of room. Down the potty and is reunited with his dad, right? So if we were to look at this, now there's a lot of information we left out of Finding Nemo's plot diagram. But if you look at this and how I simply did that, I chose only the important events that we were discussing in the rising action and then the main events that happened that led to the resolution, right? Remember, without a conflict, you have no problem to solve. So both of those things have to be there in order for you to understand plot diagram. So if you need to finish drawing this, please do. And I hope this has a better understanding for you as far as how a fictional plot diagram works.